Hello there and welcome. Welcome to Embracing Wisdom with Stacy. That's me. And today I want to dive into just kind of capturing what's been going on in my hip and why I've been a little bit more quiet these days and just really doing a lot of the work on myself that is tied to my hip and where do I go from here. So if you've been joining me for a couple years, you might remember that I had surgery number 4 on my hip early 2024. And in 2024, I ended up having 3 hip surgeries in 1 year, just in 11 months. And it's been 2 years now since, year and a half since my last surgery. And my hip is no better. And it's really interesting to me why first of all we live in such a blame culture where I get that people have the right heart and they have the right motive and intention. Most of the time I feel like I try to see the good in all people, so I know that their heart is good, but the idea that it is somebody's fault, whether it's the surgeon's fault, the hospital's fault, even my fault, people have um, implied that perhaps the reason why my hip has not healed is because of my own doing. And I just wonder, where do we go from there, and where do we let go of that? How can we embody compassion instead of blame? And I think, in my own personal therapy and going to see a therapist to try to navigate what it is that I have contributed to my pain and my lack of healing, if anything at all. And what do I do with it? And how do I process grief and loss and change? Like we all have stuff that we have to navigate through. But I think what keeps coming back for me through this is so many people want to blame. They want to point a finger and be able to, with definite certainty, put a cause. And there are times in our lives where there is no cause, there is nobody to blame, there is no person to pin it on. And I think that for me, when I have been able to come to the realization that even going through being a single mom with 3 little kids, it wasn't that I had to put the blame on my former husband, because I had partnership in that. I played a part in that. And I learned very early on in my 20s that blaming people for my life was not going to change the reality. Blaming my childhood on certain individuals was not going to change my reality. And so when I come into this hip replacement and it's unsuccessful, and people around me, strangers, friends, family, want to blame somebody for it, it just puts me back into this place where, why does blaming what's not perfect or not ideal on somebody else give people peace? And is that the microcosm of the macrocosm? Is that our individual choice that has created a culture of blaming other people for what's wrong, what may not be ideal in our lives? And I think so. I think if more people could just realize and accept that this is what it is, whether it's ideal or not ideal, there would be a lot less angst in the world. And the angst word has been coming to me quite often. Angst. Because I'm feeling a lot of angst. I'm feeling a lot of unhappiness and I'm feeling a lot of sadness. But there is nobody to blame that on, because whatever I'm feeling is on me. It's my choice. It's my freedom. We're talking about freedom in my yoga classes this month in July. It is my choice whether I want to blame somebody for my unhappiness, my sadness, my pain, my grief, or if I just want to be able to sit with it and acknowledge that this is what it is. And this is probably the best my hip's going to be. So going forward, how do I navigate pain? How do I navigate limitations and do it with grace? That's one thing. We can all go through hard things, but I want to do it with grace and curiosity. And so, as I'm out trying to go back to work and do the things that I love doing, I had an opportunity yesterday to work one on one with a man who I've known for probably 5 years. He's a very quiet, unassuming man, lives in a wheelchair. His left side is completely useless. He has no use of his left leg or his left arm. His right side is fine. His intelligence is fine. His mental capacity is fine. His language is fine. But he's very quiet. He's an observer. He's melancholy, is how I would describe him. And I had the opportunity to work one on one with him yesterday. And I don't ever ask the question of what happened to you or why are you like this. I just feel that it is what it is. And I want to meet them where they are at today. I don't need to know the hows and the whys and the stories. But a lot of times when you work one on one with somebody, it just naturally comes through. And so he was describing to me his life prior to his event. And his life was he was an engineer and he lived in Boulder, Colorado, which is an amazing place to live. He bicycled hundreds of miles a week. He hiked. He was an outdoorsman. He was an avid reader. He had a motorcycle, which now that I know that I would have never guessed that he was a motorcycle rider. He had a sports car. He had everything possible that he would actually want in his life. Except I don't believe he was ever married. I don't know that he wanted to be married, but he had all the things that we work so hard to accumulate. And he was living a great life as an engineer. And he loved his job. He loved the people in his job. He loved what he did. He worries about the use of AI and even the internet because eventually you do need a human being to sometimes fix some of the problems that you can have all the technology in the world, but sometimes you need a human being. And so we talked a little bit about that. And then he was describing to me the day that he had a stroke. And he said it was just a regular old day. He was doing what he was doing. He was in the bathroom. He was finishing up in the bathroom and he was getting ready to leave the bathroom. And he said he started to feel different. And the next thing he knows is that he's on the floor and he can't move his body. And he told me that he was on the floor somewhere between 5 to 7 days before anybody found him, lived alone. And he said eventually the EMT guys came and were able to get into the bathroom because the way that he fell, the door was closed and his body was in front of the door. I asked him if he was able to call out for help during those 5 days, and he said, not really. And he looked at me with these big brown eyes and he said to me, I can't believe that nobody even noticed I wasn't at work. Nobody noticed I wasn't around. And it really hit my heart about how lonely people must be. And yet he had this great life. He was living a great life, but that he felt unnoticed. He felt invisible. He felt that nobody would even notice that he was gone. And nobody did. Nobody even noticed that he was gone for a week from his job or his neighbors or friends. And yet as I sat and my heart ached for that because he looked genuinely bewildered as to how his people in his life would not notice that he was missing. It made me realize that in this conversation with him, there was not one blame, there was not one finger pointing, there was not one bit of bitterness, not a drop of bitterness. But he's he wants to be better. He wants to be back to the same old life, and that's not possible. And so he sits and he thinks and yet he's not bitter at all. And so it made me realize, like, as I go through this hip thing, I don't have bitterness either. Definitely don't blame my surgeon or the hospital. But I'm wondering why as a culture we have a tendency, people have a tendency to point the finger at somebody, that their life circumstances are a result of somebody doing something to them. And I wonder where we can move past that as a culture and as a community and as a group of human beings trying to navigate this world and to truly see each other as partners in this great big life and to pay attention to other people and to notice things in our lives, notice our neighbors, notice who's coming and going, notice our coworkers, notice our friends, get out of our own way to notice that there's life happening and people happening. Now, I haven't talked a lot about my hip because I feel like my hip has become, we get it, like the hip's not better. And I don't want to be one of those people that just goes on and on about the brokenness of a body part or a disease. But I also want to be very transparent and recognize that now that it's been a year and a half since my last surgery, that was supposed to be the one that really repaired my hip to be the best that it could be, has failed essentially. And I'm going back to the surgeon next week to just have a discussion about the limitations that I have and the pain that I'm in. And then to complicate matters more, because my right hip has been taking the brunt of my body weight and ability for 10, 11 years, my right hip is starting to show some significant pain. So that creeps in the idea of fear and uncertainty. And what will my life be like if I have to endure more surgery and now start the whole process on my right hip? So I catch myself in the thoughts, the going forward, the wondering, and I pull myself back into the present because in the present moment, I'm in my garden. I've got beautiful flowers and there's nobody to blame. It just simply is. It just simply is. And as I look out in my garden and I refer to nature a lot in my book, I broke my book up into 4 seasons because I feel like we're cyclical like nature. And I'm looking at my zinnias blooming and they're just all popping and they're so happy. And yet the roses that are nearby are not quite there. And they're not competing. They're not saying, hey, the zinnias are taking over. They're getting all the attention. They're just patient. And I know flowers don't have cognitive thoughts as we do, but nature is such a great teacher. They're not blaming anybody. They're not blaming anybody because they didn't bloom as big as they did last year or whatever. Nature is here to remind us, one, to pay attention, same as my student yesterday. Notice what's around you, notice people, notice differences every day, which is why I spend a lot of time in the garden because I like to come out and see what happened in the 24 hours since I'd been out before. What's blooming, what's ending its cycle of bloom, what's about to bloom. And then the garden teaches us that there's no competition, there's no comparison, there's no right, there's no wrong, there's nothing to blame. It just simply is. Last year, I had not one single tomato. It just simply was. Nothing to blame, just they didn't grow. And so I spend a lot of time out here thinking about life, thinking about the people that I get to teach, people that teach me. I think about my hip and what's next for me in my life and in my management of pain. And I know that my heart is in the right place, and that is most important to me. My hip, I can't get on the floor, I can't do a lot of things, but my heart's in the right place. And I think if we can all just remember that our life is what it is, and that we play a part in it, and that we are in partnership with all people, and with our surgeons, and with our doctors, and with our friends, and with our family, and with our neighbors, and with our strangers, and the people in the grocery store. There is a partnership to this. It is not you versus me or them versus me, that there is an energy of partnership and true community in everything that we do. I think the world would come together, the world would be better. So that's what I got for you. That's a little long rambling thing. Rosie's here to say hey. And anyway, thanks for coming to my little miniature TED talk out on the patio with my coffee and my dog. I'll talk to you soon, though there's more coming. I got a 3-part series coming actually on sort of this topic, but how do we navigate changes and loss in our life with grace. So that's a 3-part series coming up. That'll start soon. So stay tuned and I will talk to you soon. Bye.